The Secret Service took out the sniper. But why did it take so long, right? And why did he shoot after after the president was already shot and another person died? The law enforcement, they were not on the same radio frequency for an hour beforehand. The law enforcement knew about it, but the Secret Service didn't.
And it's why I think it's very wise that Speaker Johnson and Leader Jeffries called for and have introduced a resolution to do a bipartisan task force to investigate this. Is like part of the value here is to try to get rid of the fringe conspiracy theories on this, right? Because there's no time for that. We need actual answers about the failures that happened.
All right, guys, a lot to get into today. Secret Service Director, she's gone after that disastrous hearing yesterday. We're going to break that down in a way that I don't think anybody else will. If you want to know what happened yesterday and why and everything about that assassination attempt, stay in touch. Joe Biden's returning to Washington, and Kamala Harris officially has the delegates. Oh, it's not a coronation, but she's the nominee and she's got the delegates. So, ha, ha, ha. All right, before I do that, I want to kick it off by telling you about one of our great sponsors. These are my Gravity Defier shoes. Now, I put these on, I don't know, a while ago. I love walking with them. It is a total game changer in general, but I love them because I think I've told you this before. I've got two hips that need some work, and I got a knee, my right one, the meniscus is torn. And these things make me feel like I'm walking on a cloud. The cushion, the support, it's unbelievable. They've got this Verso technology in them. It's the stuff that like they use in trampolines, and it's unbelievable. When I go walking or running, these things have changed the ability. No pain. I love doing it. And I'm telling you, if you've had any of those kind of issues or you just love like good arch support, they come with these custom orthotics. It's unbelievable. And they've got everything. They've got walking shoes, training, like if you like to go to the gym, they've got special ones just for running. And like every other sneaker, I've got two pairs. I've got one for running and then one for like walking and training and going to the gym. I love them both. I'm telling you, you are not going to go back. Once you put these on your feet, these are your new sneakers. And they also have sandals, by the way, if that's your thing. But I'm telling you, the walking and training ones that I've gotten, the running ones, this is it. New shoe for life. Unbelievable. And if you go to gdefy.com, Gravity Defier, right? gdefy.com, you could check out all the various things. The cool part is when you go there, if you enter code SPICER30, you get $30 off your order of $150 or more. Go to Gravity Defier, gdefy.com, use code SPICER30 for $30 off. All right, let me get back to the bottom line here. Kamala Harris is the nominee. It's over. It's done. I told you this yesterday. She's raised $100 million in 24 hours. $100 million. Okay? The party's excited and they're behind her. This is it. It's over. Stop letting people tell you anything but that. Okay? She's got the delegates. They all committed to her. The chair of the DNC says they're going ahead with this roll call vote. But here's the point, and I keep telling you, she's a shapeshifter. She'll be whoever we want, and the press is going to cover that. I want to read you real quick. This is Axios this morning. Beyond the age issue, Democrats are salivating at the obvious contrast between Trump and Harris. Trump is a 78-year-old white male while running with a white male running mate, half his age. Harris is the first Black Asian American woman vice president in U.S. history. Trump's a convicted felon who's been found liable for sexual abuse. Harris has prosecuted alleged sexual abusers. Trump has boasted about appointing 3 justices to help overturn Roe versus Wade. Harris has made abortion rights. They're making the case for her. You have to understand the press defaulted. They're back to being an advocate. There's a whole story in Playbook. That was Axios about how House Republicans are talking about her as the borders are. You know what Playbook says at the end? Harris's role was a focus on root causes of immigration from the Northern Triangle countries, not the border. They're going to help her. The media, Hollywood, academia, government. The race has changed, the dynamic. We need to take this seriously, okay? Understand that. And I will continue to hammer on this, but stop thinking that this is the same race. Anybody out there who tells you that is wrong. All right, the U.S. Secret Service Director was on the Hill yesterday. She got crushed. Today she resigned. Susan Crabtree is going to give us the inside scoop. She is the White House and national political reporter at Real Clear Politics. She has covered Capitol Hill, at the Hill, roll call, the Washington Examiner. She was the one who forced the last or two directors ago to resign. This is her wheelhouse. She's going to tell us about how that hearing went down. Before that, I want to tell you about my friend Leo Grillo, though. You know he's the founder of Delta Rescue. Done amazing work rescuing dogs, cats, horses in need, that need veterinary care, that were abused, that need nutritional care. But Delta Rescue, and if you go to deltarescue.org, you can see what I'm talking about, the videos there. It's a no-kill sanctuary for life. Leo Grillo rescues these animals and then make sure that they never have to worry. They don't have to go find a home or get adopted or become shelter. No, Delta Rescue takes care of it for life. And the only reason that Leo's able to do this is because of the help of people like me and you. Please go to deltarescue.org, give a gift, but then go to the estate planning kit and think about, pray on whether animal rescue, animal rights, animal, help is something that you can be part of and that your legacy is. Go to deltarescue.org, contribute if you can, think about making that part of your legacy as well. All right, I want to bring in Susan Crabtree, and then when we're done with that, I'm going to introduce Tim Hogan, a top Hillary staffer, to tell us about where the Democrats are in their process. First, Susan Crabtree. All right, Susan, you were at that hearing yesterday. Bring me inside. Like, what was the feeling in the room?
Oh, it was sort of outrage and frustration on both sides. When you have, somebody like AOC uniting with MTG.
It has been 10 days since an assassination attempt on a former president of the United States, regardless of party. There need to be answers.
Do you have a timeline at all from any of the day?
I have a timeline that does not have specifics.
That's shocking. That is absolutely unacceptable. That means you are a failure at your job.
That seldom happens on the Oversight Committee, as you well know. And it was sort of a unified response. And then as you got to the end of the hearing, James Comer and Jamie Raskin joined together and they said, we're issuing a joint letter to you calling on you to resign. I mean, I think there was quite a few members on both sides that called for her to resign. But the real thing that I thought was outrageous is, the lying to the reporters all week, lying to Mike Waltz all week about whether the president or the president's detail in this case asked for additional resources and then didn't get them. And we were told that was a flat out lie. It was, I was told I was very wrong on a different story that I'll bring up later, tweeted directly at me. And
when you say they, you mean the Secret Service tweeted back at you and said you're lying, or their spokesman, or who?
Yeah, their spokesman tweeted at me Sunday night. I had emailed him a list of questions, 6 very detailed questions. And instead of answering my questions in an email or calling me like a normal press secretary would do, a responsible one, he decided he'd go on Twitter and tweet directly at me and say, this is very wrong. And it wasn't in response to that. I'll get to that. It was about the division of labor between the Trump rally and the Jill Biden dinner. I was saying that there was a diversion between the two. I probably should have said a misallocation to begin with, but it was a semantics issue that he's trying to get me on. And then Fox News, picked it up in the morning. And I said, I stand by my sources. And by the way, if you're talking to me on Twitter and not talking to me over email or calling me, you have my number, because I had talked to him just 3 months ago on that story about the Kamala Harris the detailee that had a mental breakdown at Joint Base Andrews. So we had been in regular touch. So he knew how to get a hold of me, and he called me back then. So, there was no reason why he had to do that, but he just decided that was the best, most effective way of trying to shut me down. And he said the same thing to Mike Waltz, Representative Waltz.
So let's kind of just explain to me, when you talk about the allocation of resources with Jill Biden, can you kind of expand on that a minute? I know she was having another event in Pennsylvania, and I think they were actually covering a third event. Like, walk us through what was happening in Pennsylvania that day and how resources were or were not allocated.
Yes. So you had obviously the Trump rally with 50,000 people, a huge event and an outdoor setting that they had never been to before. They had actually wanted to do it at the airport, and they had used that same airport in 2020 during that campaign. So the Secret Service was used to that venue. They decided that was already taken. Somebody was already they already had an event scheduled there, so they decided to do it at this farm show venue. And I will get into the problems that they encountered, and they rushed it. It was rushed. And then they had this Jill Biden event that they had to take care of that was a dinner for the Italian sons and daughters at a casino inside 300 people. So, and then they had a Kamala Harris event in Philadelphia that was a little bit, I heard that wasn't such an impingement, but then they had the NATO summit that same week leading up to this. And then they had, of course, the RNC convention, which, as you probably know, if you were there, it was, law enforcement everywhere, DHS and Secret Service agents and uniformed division officers everywhere.
So can I ask you this? Why, what's wrong? I mean, I don't mean to say it this way, but why wouldn't you just say, hey, here's the reality. We had these 4 things. We were spread thin. Hey, and I mean, like, that to me is a very Washington answer. Hey, we need more money. We need more resources. We were spread really thin. Think about it. We got the First Lady traveling here. We got Trump here. He's at an outdoor thing. We got the RNC coming up. We got this other Kamala Harris thing. It's almost like they were embarrassed to admit it.
Well, I don't know if they have the resources for all of that. What they're doing, Sean, is they're taking from, you might know about this, during the campaign, they draw from different field offices, and they have an acronym for it. It's called CNOS. But what it is temporary agents that serve a shift, like a 21-day shift, I think it is, but they haven't really worked together before, and these are not the regular detailees to President Trump. So there was a lot of what they call shorthand inside the Secret Service calls temps that were on hand at the Trump rally that day. And that was because a lot of the people had been working, his regular detailees had been working 24/7. And so they needed some time off, but a lot of them were allowed to take off that day. In fact, I'm told a handful, and maybe just one, Sean Curran, the lead agent that assigned to Donald Trump, was the only regular agent there at the rally that day. Yeah.
Holy
the rest
smokes.
were temps. Yeah. And then
so the guys around him that are literally covering him, the woman that we saw, the other, those were not part of his regular detail?
Only from what I'm told, I'm saying I've told, some people are telling me it's a handful, and some people are telling me it's just one, Sean Curran, the lead agent, the one that asked, by the way, the one that has asked for and requested the additional resources. So he is obviously very committed to the security of Donald Trump, protecting him. But if you want to get into the division of resources between that and the Jill Biden rally, Senator Grassley had some findings from whistleblowers that he gave me on Sunday, and I published that story, and it was very telling because the Trump rally had only 3 post standards. Do you know what those are, right, Sean? So they are put in the interim inside the perimeter at targeted places to provide additional resources to shore up vulnerability spots. And they're not the regular detail that would go surround Trump if there was a threat. They're actually posted to certain spots at the venue. And then Jill Biden, guess how many she had? 12. 12. Now that's just one sign. We don't know the breakdown of all the resources, and because Grassley has asked for that from the Secret Service twice this week in different letters, and he has not received a response. He wants a breakdown of all the resources now that we know that the post standards were not evenly distributed.
You know, I said this at the outset. I mean, you've covered a lot of stuff over your time as a journalist. Mm-hmm. Have you ever seen a situation, because I cannot recall one, where an incident of this kind of magnitude, and frankly, not even this, a shooting, a natural disaster, a major security event, you name it, where there haven't been regular briefings to the media?
I always think of like the Columbia, explosion, something that significant to our national interest, and people are nervous and rattled by it. And you need to put out information so that there's not, all these conspiracy theories going on out there, because that's the nature of it's human nature to think, well, what if, I didn't see it with my own eyes. I'm not getting my questions answered. And in this case, we are finding things out, in dribs and drabs. And just in the last 24 hours, we found out that that Thomas Crooks had a cell phone, and he had pictures of a Michigan school shooter on it, and he had encrypted apps that were located in different countries. And I don't think that's too rare, but it starts leading to questions, logical questions that people may have, like, well, is there a foreign agent involved in this?
I tell you, Susan, I know that sounds wacky, but I watch enough of this, crime television. I love the Jack Carr novels and the Vince Flynn books and all this kind of stuff. And tell me, this is how crazy this sounds, but it sounds like you've got Iran issuing a threat saying we're going to kill it. And then this kid out of nowhere, who's not a great shot, he gets kicked off the rifle team, has no social media footprint, but they're starting to find these encrypted things here and there. And I'm going, is it that nuts to think that somehow they get to this kid, they compromise him, and they say, hey, here's the deal. You're going to do this, or we go after your family, or do something like that? I don't know, but this is, to your point, in lieu of a vacuum of information, I read all this stuff on the internet, and I'm like, I don't know, maybe that isn't that crazy, because no one's telling me it's not. No one's giving the answers. And let's go back to this hearing for a second. I watched some of it. I saw a lot of the clips from it. I felt like you finally come forward. Let me start. I want to play you. I thought there's actually a great clip of Congressman Moskowitz, who is a Democrat. And I want to play this clip for you. I'm sure you see it, but I want the viewers to understand this is how a Democrat teed up the hearing to her. Let's play the clip.
Director, I just want to give you an honest assessment of how this is going for you today. Did you happen to catch the hearing many months ago in education where there were a bunch of university presidents, and Elise Stefanik asked a very easy question and couldn't get an answer? Did you see that hearing?
No, I don't think I did.
Okay, well, let me tell you, it didn't go well, and the short end of that story was those university professors all resigned. They're gone. That's how this is going for you. This is where this is headed, okay? I don't know who prepared you for this. I don't know how many times you've testified in front of Congress, but a president was almost assassinated live on television, not just for Americans, but for the world to see. And this being your first opportunity, I understand there's an ongoing investigation. I understand there's things that you can not talk about. But the idea that we're getting less than you did on television is something that Democrats, Independents, or Republicans are going to find unacceptable.
That, to me, set the table perfectly, right? No one's talked to the American people. She finally agrees under subpoena to testify. Did you learn anything yesterday, Susan Crabtree?
Here's what I learned. There was pieces of information she provided. Like she said at one point that she believed it was a lone shooter. Well, that was reassuring. Because there was
wait. But believed, right? Is that the word that you just said? She believed it was?
She didn't say it so definitively. That
doesn't inspire confidence, does it?
It wasn't completely definitively, but she said, she was getting this information from the FBI. But she couldn't share all the information she got from the FBI. But here's what I think happened. And I think I sort of garnered this information, and I went and talked to Benny Thompson last night at the votes, and he's the ranking member of the Homeland Security Committee, and of course he has a troubled history here of trying to take away the Secret Service, or at least doing a symbolic measure, writing a legislation that would take away the Secret Service from Donald Trump if he had a felony. That never win anything in the Republican Congress. But anyway, what I'm trying to get at here is she did talk about this lack of communication between why did it take so long for the Secret Service sniper. It was a Secret Service sniper. At first, we didn't know if it was the law enforcement sniper, if it was a Secret Service sniper. There were two teams that equaling 4, 2 teams of 2 in the Secret Service, and there was one law enforcement team of 2 snipers. The Secret Service took out the sniper. But why did it take so long, right? And why did he shoot after the president was already shot, basically grazed, and another person died? I mean, it's just terrible that it took that much. Well, what I'm hearing and what I'm coming to grips with is that the law enforcement, they were not on the same radio frequency. Because at first I was told, well, there's a radio frequency. They call back to this command center, and there's the Secret Service people making decisions. Maybe it's back at the field office in Pittsburgh, but there's senior people making these decisions. They call back. They see a suspicious person, but that's not what happened. For an hour beforehand, the law enforcement, almost an hour, the law enforcement knew about it, but the Secret Service didn't. And if you look at Senator Ron Johnson's initial report that he put out on Sunday, that I got a hold of, I think first I did, and I put it on my Twitter. He lays this out. He uses the word siloed. They were siloed from each other. And Kimberly Chealte, before that had come out, and Kimberly Chealte sat there yesterday and told us that they have a protocol, they have a policy of making sure law enforcement and Secret Service are in that command center together, local law enforcement, a representative, so that there's constant communication, so that they're not siloed. And then I think she called it interoperability.
Yes.
Okay? That was the term she used. Well, then I went and talked to Benny Thompson. It was interesting to me what he said. He was at Butler. He went to Butler with the Homeland Security Committee yesterday or the day before. And what he took away from that is the local law enforcement weren't in the command center. So they weren't talking to each other very well.
Oh, so it's like, hey, we're going to send a message back, but no one's even there to receive it.
Well, they were talking amongst themselves. There was all these, there was Beaver County and Butler County law enforcement, and they were talking amongst themselves. They took pictures of the guy, and for literally, I would say it was almost an hour. It's like from 5, about a little bit after 5 till 5:59. And at 5:59, if you look at Senator Johnson's report, they finally tell the Secret Service finally starts reacting. And it was around
but the thing that was weird, right, is
when it finally happened.
So there's the whole, he was on the roof thing, right? But then there's the beginning. They see this guy go walking around with a rangefinder. They lose track of him. Then there's reports of him on the roof initially, or trying to get. The thing that I thought was fascinating about the hearing yesterday is they asked her, why wasn't it delayed? And even President Trump's been asked this, and he said, hey, I would have waited 5 minutes or a half hour or whatever. Why didn't they say, we have a security issue? I've talked to Secret Service agents in the last couple of weeks, and they say all the time that there's something that's suspicious. It's out of place. There's a guy doing something, and they want to check it out before they do it. And that's a lot of times why an event gets delayed. And yet, no one delayed this event. They let the president go out knowing that this guy Crooks was around somewhere and that he had been suspicious and he had a rangefinder and that there was a report of somebody. And yet no one said, hey, let's pause this for a second.
And I think that has to do with if you look very closely at Senator Johnson's report, it says local law enforcement was talking amongst themselves until 5:59. And that's right before President Trump went on stage. So they're reacting at that point. They're not planning at that point. They're just reacting. And that's the serious problem, because what Director Cheatle was saying, calling interoperability, broke down.
Right.
Yeah, it completely broke down. And that's where I think is the serious problem. That and the fact that nobody was stationed on that roof. And we still, to this day, after asking numerous questions and watching a hearing and watching every bit of piece of information that's been flowing from Congress on this and the Secret Service, I still don't really know if there were local law enforcement counter snipers in that building or not.
Susan, this is what I want to tap into. You've been covering stuff for a long time, different major publications, whatever. I cannot believe, it blows my mind, in fact, 2 weeks later, the most basic aspects of this, we don't know. And we're not getting it. We've got the Secret Service saying, I don't know. I can't comment. I'm sorry. I'm defaulting to the conspiracy theories. I'm like, what are you guys covering up? You've got bipartisanship. Everybody's like, this is a problem. And I'm going, what's the issue? It's not like you can't find these people in Butler County to say, hey, did you call this person back? Who did you radio to tell there was a problem? Who answered you? What did they say? But what is happening that 2 weeks later, an assassination attempt on the leading candidate for president that also killed another individual and wounded 2 others, we still don't have the most basic answers. As a journalist, is it wrong to think there's something really going on here?
Well, it really was disconcerting to me when they started, trying to discredit reporting and trying to discredit Mike Walls. And all of a sudden, the Washington Post reports it, and I say, personally, that whole model that when the Washington Post reports something, it becomes news. The New York Times reports something, it's not news until they report it. That model is passé. Okay, we're in a new era, and if a journalist that has 30 years of experience like myself report something, and I've had a good track record on this beat. I broke this story that caused Julia Pearson to resign. I don't know if you remember that, but it's the same problem. It's deja vu all over again, because the Secret Service, Julia Pearson, didn't keep her comms team in the loop, and they were insisting to me it was wrong. This man in the elevator with President Obama that was armed but wasn't cleared to have the gun. So that story broke in 2014. It was the fall. And her comms team was insisting to me that it was wrong. And I said, I have very detailed, very excellent sources. So I went with it. They told other reporters that I was wrong. And then all of a sudden, Carol Leone from the Washington Post writes a story. And all of a sudden, wait a second, it's right.
So right now, in your expert opinion, is the comms team lying? Is she covering this thing up? I mean, where is the real story right now?
So when they started putting out those, the comms team started saying that, I still think she was information gathering. That was Sunday night when they started basically lying to the press. And misleading. I will say misleading. I don't even think they had all the information. My sources from within the Secret Service community tell me that it takes like 24 hours, 48 hours for them to get the information. So they thought they knew what was going on, but they really didn't know. They certainly didn't know about this allocation between the Jill Biden, and because that's not done. She even said, Kimberly Chealte even said yesterday, she doesn't sign off. She did not sign off on the security plan. That was the rank and file, with a more middle manager that did that. In fact, from what
did she get held accountable for like the sloped roof or anything? I mean, there's things that just don't pass the smell test anymore. It's stupid.
She revised that comment yesterday, and she did not. As the members of Congress, of Republicans from the Homeland Security Committee, were out there, and a 70-year-old member of Congress is out there walking on the roof just fine. Took a photo. He took a little.
Wait. So explain to people what you mean by that.
Yeah. So the Republicans on the Homeland Security Committee, on the House Homeland Security Committee, went to Butler, and the Democrats went too, and they were on the ground, and they decided they go climb up on the roof of that roof and see just how dangerous it was. And you had a 70-year-old member,
Carlos Jimenez from Florida, right?
There you go. Right.
I'm standing in approximately the site where the shooter was. As you can see, I'm a 70-year-old man, and this roof is not a big deal. So for somebody to tell me that Secret Service agents couldn't have been here, that's crazy.
But yesterday she said, no, that's not the reason. She changed her story and said they had Overwatch. And she didn't really explain that. This was in a questioning from AOC. And she didn't really explain what that meant, but I'm understanding that it means some type of aerial surveillance, but she won't.
Yeah,
she doesn't want to talk about
give me a break.
drones.
You know what, by the way, if you read Jack Carr's new book, James Reese, the fictional character, talks about Overwatch. I mean, I literally think they're reading stuff and making crap up as they go right now, because that's how nuts this is.
We can get into the DEI issues at the Secret Service. I've written a lot about that. There's a petition out there circulating about that. So we had warning signs a few months ago that there was a problem with it at Joint Base Andrews with Harris's detail having a mental breakdown. And there was a petition circulating on change.org that calling for her resignation May 6th from within the Secret Service community.
Right.
So it was gathering signatures, and we can go into that. But she does believe in this 30 by 30 policy. And, it is, you saw it that day. I'm not saying that there are a lot of female agents. A lot of female agents can do amazing things, and some can even do better. And have better training, can perform better in their training tests than men. And I've had the male Secret Service agents tell me that. But in this case, we saw a woman who was 5'5" do what she was trained to do, and that is spread her arms to make herself bigger to protect the president. But he was still exposed from the torso up. So, there's certain things that don't make sense. And when you saw at the Republican National
Convention, this goes back to your point about they didn't have the resources. They're sending in temps. Susan, I know that we've gotten word now that she has resigned. Do you think that that aside, let's just table that for a second. How does this story play out from here from someone like you that's covering it? Are they hoping that, hey, let's push her out and the story goes away, or is there going to be continued and renewed pressure to get to the bottom of this?
Well, it's concerning to me because now who is going to be the figurehead that we need to ask our questions to? Her comms team has lost, trust we've lost trust in the media and in Congress with her communications team. So who is a deputy going to stand up? I would like to know. And if he's going to completely turn it around and start talking and having briefings, I think he could turn it around and we can get some real information and restore trust. There's an opportunity here, but she needed to go. She mishandled this from the get-go. The buck stops with her, but she was saying, I'm going to take responsibility, but there was no accountability until this moment.
100%. She kept saying that, I want to take responsibility, but I'm not going to commit to even firing anybody. Obviously now she is fired herself. Susan, thanks for being with you. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks.
All right. Before I bring in Tim Hogan, former Hillary staffer, to talk about the race on the Dem side, I want to tell you about our friends at 4patriots.com. Think about it, politically the last week. We've never seen anything like this. We never know when a crisis or an emergency is going to hit. But it's not just political ones, it's real ones too. Natural disasters, electrical grid hits. I'm prepared. I've told you this before if you watch the show. I have a Patriot Power Generator 2000X in my house, right? It powers everything. Your refrigerator, medical devices, tablets, computers. It's portable. It can go anywhere. I can carry it in my fridge to my house. I can carry it to a friend or a family member's house. And the thing is that it runs off solar panels that come free with it. You don't have to worry about gas, finding it, refilling it, fumes, noise, all that. The Patriot Power Generator takes care of all those things. And if you go to 4patriots.com/Spicer, you will get an amazing deal on it, right? And that's the thing, is get ahead of this right now. Don't get behind the curve. Go to 4patriots.com/Spicer. Get your Patriot Power Generator 2000X with the free solar panels right now so that you are not behind the curve. All right, let me bring in Tim Hogan. Hey, Tim, before we get going on the political stuff, Kim Cheatle, the Director of Secret Service, stepped down today. Bipartisan disaster of a hearing yesterday. It was sort of like Raskin, Moskowitz, Jim Jordan, MTG, AOC, all the initials teamed up together. It was AOC, MTG, you name it. They all got together. But here's my political question for you. Was this a missed opportunity for the White House, whether it was Biden or Harris, to call for her resignation before she stepped down?
Yeah. I don't know, to be honest. I think that the way that this was approached, which was a bipartisan way from Congress, is probably the right way to go. And that momentum was there almost immediately after the assassination attempt, right? And
right. But what I'm getting at is, this as a political operative, right? That you see, it's sort of, I always say it's like after a natural disaster, when a member of Congress writes a letter to FEMA, as if FEMA didn't know there was a storm. But they want to be able to say, I wrote a letter and then FEMA delivered, right? Should they have said, you're going to resign, we want to ask for it.
I do think, though, that in this circumstance, particularly like this polarized political environment that we are in, and it's why I think it's very wise that Speaker Johnson and Leader Jeffries called for and have introduced a resolution to do a bipartisan task force to investigate this, is like part of the value here is to try to get rid of or crowd out the fringe conspiracy theories on this, right? Because there's no time for that. We need actual answers about the failures that happened. And so discussions about like this was an inside job or anything you've seen floating around. I think it's wise that Congress took the lead on this, honestly.
I am too. And I said our last guest was Susan Crabtree, who's been reporting on this. And I said, look, I've been doing the PR stuff for 30 years. I know a lot of these Secret Service guys, but like the lack of information and transparency over the last 10 plus days has really led a lot of these conspiracies to take, to get oxygen. And unfortunately, I think rightly so, meaning that if you're not telling me when the Secret Service director yesterday couldn't say, did he act alone? And she says, I believe that was the case. That doesn't instill a ton of confidence.
Yeah, I think the problem is there are a lot of questions and then there are a lot of really bad answers. And that doesn't always lead to forthrightness or transparency. I mean, like we talked about this when we were getting a briefing at the RNC about the security perimeter being updated after the incident and the Secret Service went out. We didn't get answers in that press conference. I think everyone was really stunned by that, is that there was not transparency in that moment.
Mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Mind-blowing. I mean, it was, like I said, I've never seen, this will go down as a case study in bad PR. Because it's one thing, I mean, you can get away a lot of times with saying this. Like even yesterday, I think some of her answers, she could have just said, ma'am, that's a classified discussion that I'm willing to have with you. But I can't, I mean, to say I don't, like she looked clueless and that did not instill confidence. All right, I want to pivot to the bigger news of the day and your expertise. Based on the delegate reaction in the last 24 hours, it's safe to say Kamala Harris is the nominee. She will not be challenged, correct?
Correct. Yes. There will not even be token opposition. It is done.
Okay. Jamie Harrison, the chair of the DNC, was on the Today Show this morning. He said they're still planning on going forward with this virtual roll call, right? Is that a good idea?
I think it's fine. Honestly, I think the party is in a place where it's ready to rally. It's also still, to be clear, as much as I say like it's done, it's just because the writing is on the wall. It's not that the process has been closed or, the opportunity has been taken away from anybody. It's just that, look, she announced she raised $100 million from 1.1 million donors. 62% of them are new. The momentum is there. The delegates are there. The Democratic Party is ready to get behind her. And there's just no denying that, right? You could not invent.
Were you shocked? I mean, I got to be honest, that number, that's a big number dollar-wise, and it's a big number new donor-wise. I was shocked by it. Were you?
Yeah. I mean, I think it is the best day in Act Blue's history, right? And we're talking about wild events. I mean,
just the left platform.
Yes,
like
right.
We have
right. Yeah, and for example, like the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg right before the election, huge rallying moment. And this is well beyond that. So it is in the fall of Dobbs also, or the fall of Roe with Dobbs, also a huge moment. But this eclipses all of it, and I think it shows the stakes. It does show how energized the base is and is ready to support Kamala.
All right, let's go to mechanics for a second. There's a lot of reporting that they're trying to recruit David Plouffe to come in as a senior, to some kind of senior role. How important is that for perception and also just an effective campaign?
Yeah. I mean, one of the benefits, right, is that the vice president inherits the campaign infrastructure. You inherit the campaign leadership. You inherit the campaign coffers. I think maybe there is a question about whether or not there is a refresh of leadership. I don't think by any means that's like a foregone conclusion. I don't know what the conversations with Plouffe have been. I don't know if he's reaching out or they're reaching out to him. But that's a decision that she does get to make, right? There is a change at the very top of the ticket. So there could be potentially people added to the mix and senior staff. I don't think you're going to see a huge shakeup. We saw her say yesterday, right? She asked for the campaign manager to stay on. She asked for Jenna Mellie-Dillenstan. Very smart. I think they are really savvy operators. They were operating in a very difficult environment previously. So it's good to keep the folks that we have there.
I've been very critical. And look, I am a staffer at heart, right? So I hate when staff gets blamed. Yep. But I blame Biden's staff for putting him in the position that it was in terms of the debate. We didn't have that debate, we wouldn't be here where we are right now. I would, if you're Harris, do you question their loyalty and their decision making? No,
I don't think so. I mean, like, I also don't think it was set that walking into that debate that we knew it would be a performance that would lead to the situation where we're in right now. I think
but you had to know. Look,
there was a possibility. I think there was a possibility that we got Joe Biden at the State of the Union. If it is a case where he has bad days, and that was a bad day. It was just bad enough that he is no longer at the top of the ticket. So I don't think.
Right, but you're rolling the dice, right?
Yeah.
You knew. I
We
mean, like
had to.
they knew that they were like, hey, he could have a great performance. But there was a lot of, I mean, my point is you set him up, you put him on a high wire and said, hey, if you cross the canyon, it'll be really cool. The downside is you could probably fall off.
But I think at that point, remember where we were, right? And it's, we have a reset now, so we'll see what the vibes are going forward. But we wanted that debate because the campaign was starting to feel like a referendum on Joe Biden at that point, how the economy was feeling. It wasn't on Donald Trump. He was kind of evading some media criticism. And there was no better way to make it a choice election than to put them both on stage and to show contrasting visions. And, to your point, it did not go as planned.
All right, let's talk strategy here. There's a story in Political this morning that says Harris's emerging brain trust is also starting to rethink how the fundamentals of the race against Donald Trump have changed. They believe Harris's relatively strength is with young black and brown voters will put more states in play than a weakened Biden could have credibly contested. Quote, the Midwest is not where the opportunity is for her, one veteran Democratic operative close to Harris told Playbook. The opportunity with her is going to be in Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, and Pennsylvania. And however those 4 states go, the rest of the country will follow. So it sounds to me like they're abandoning Michigan, Wisconsin, the so-called blue wall, in favor of that parking, which we'll get to the VP part of this in a second. But is that actually a viable strategy for them?
Well, I don't think you can say, I don't think they're abandoning the blue wall. I don't think any good strategist would be abandoning the blue wall. I'm like indicative of the fact that Kamala Harris is in Milwaukee today, right? It's her first rally that she's going to be holding. But to that point, there was polling that came out that Civics Analytics has been doing since the debate. And just looking at some of those demographics, for example, young voters, 18 to 34, Biden was +8, Harris was +20. When it came to Black voters, Hispanic voters, Harris picked up 7 percentage points. She picked up with Black voters 8 percentage points with Hispanic voters, almost all shifting them away from third-party candidates. So I think their theory of the case is right there, is that each candidate at the top of the ticket gets to build their own coalition. She doesn't inherit the Biden coalition. She has a ton of goodwill, and the Democratic base is going to come with her. But she also has advantages to press that I think are different than President Biden could. And so, I think those states in the Southwest, the Sun Belt, may be more in play, where previously it kind of looked like they were slipping away.
All right, this morning on the Two-Way with Mark Halperin, we talked VP stakes, right? I if I had to put money today, I'd say I give Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, the nod, because more electoral votes are in Pennsylvania. I think he's got a better shot. The Republicans that I talked to prior to this week like Josh Shapiro. I think for that reason, he could put Pennsylvania in play a lot more than, say, maybe a Mark Kelly would in Arizona. I know you brought up potentially Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota. If you had to guess today, where does she go and why?
Yeah, just to your point on Josh Shapiro, I mean, I think during the RNC or slightly before, we saw David McCormick, who's the Senate candidate there, Republican, shaking hands with Josh Shapiro, took a picture of it, tweeted it.
I know.
Some appeal there. And I do agree. I think it is Shapiro, Kelly, maybe outside Cooper. And look, I'm from Minnesota. So I love Governor Tim Walz.
All right, that's why. Today. I knew there was a reason. I knew it. And
But he is from rural Minnesota, graduated from a high school class of 400. His congressional district, which he won multiple times, bordered by Steve King, Michelle Bachmann. He's a veteran. He's a teacher. There's so much good bio there, and he's a good communicator. So I'm by no means saying, Tim Walz is going to get the nod, but I think he's in the conversation. We've also been seeing reporting from MSNBC that they've requested his vetting materials. So he's in it.
All right. I still think I'm going with Shapiro. Last thing I want to ask you is this. Benjamin Netanyahu is addressing a joint session of Congress tomorrow. Obviously, big issue, the split within the Democratic Party in particular in terms of support for the Palestinians. How big of a deal is it optically that Vice President Harris will not preside in her role as president of the Senate tomorrow when he addresses a joint session of Congress?
I mean, I do think there's been reporting that she did have a meeting with him. I think also, and we talked about this in Two-Way this morning, I think part of the edge gets taken off on that attack, because now we're also hearing that J.D. Vance is not going to be attacked.
Yeah, but he's not the president of the Senate. He doesn't preside
He's not the
over
president of the
this.
Senate. I don't think it is a snub, like purposeful snub. I mean, he's going to meet also, we're hearing, with President Biden, but later in the week, because the president's still recovering from COVID. So I don't think it's a barb to be launched at the VP.
Okay, well, I'll launch it. I appreciate you being on here. Obviously, so much more to talk about in terms of strategy, what she will try to do with her record and her policies. So hopefully we can get you back here in the next week or so. Tim, I really appreciate you joining us. It's always fun to be with you in the mornings on these two ways. Usually tomorrow, Wednesday, we're actually moving it back up to 8, then it'll go back to 9. But you can always watch these two ways. It's a great conversation, a great way to start your morning. So I appreciate you joining us a little later in the day, a full day of Tim Hogan with us. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Sean.
Amazing conversation. We're going to continue to follow all of this all week long. Continue to subscribe, hit that notification button, YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeart, wherever you get them. And we're always back in the mornings. Tomorrow morning, that two-way starts at 8 a.m. Join us back here on my channel. Hit the notification button. We'll see you back here. Thank you. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.